We have the extreme pleasure of hosting Elder of Zion, one of the most prolific bloggers against anti-Semitism. Elder is the reliable source and often quoted in many media outlets. He is famous for his daily blog. He's been blogging for over 20 years. Everyone will be muted. Please put your questions in the chat, which will be answered after Elder's presentation. Now we present Elder of Zion. Elder?
Thank you very much, Gary. I do appreciate it, and thank you very much for your kind words. Thanks also to all of the sponsors, and thanks, of course, to Sherry, who helped put all of this together. I very much appreciate that. Let's get going. The first question people want to know is, who am I? Since I'm anonymous, that's a hard question to answer. But I have a blog. I've had the blog since 2004. I try to be as eclectic as possible in my blog. So I have a lot of original analysis. I look at history. I look at legal arguments, of which there are plenty. I'm often very sarcastic. Since the very early days, I'm not an Arabic speaker, but I have been using Google Translate fairly effectively for a long time in order to be able to translate articles from Arabic. And when I don't understand something, I do have some experts that I can lean on. The translations are getting better lately, but I often find scoops that way, just going through Arabic articles. Lately, Turkish as well. There's an amazing amount of anti-Semitism in Turkish media, which I've been discovering lately. Looking for links that other people generally don't find. I make my own original cartoons, my own memes, sometimes videos. I do have a lot of scoops, and I also do, like Camera, like one of the hosts or one of the sponsors. I also do my own media criticism and whatever else comes into my head. I've so far written 2 books. The one that has been prompting this presentation, that people were very interested in hearing more about, was written a couple of years ago, Protocols Exposing Modern Anti-Semitism. And a lot of the sort of things that I discuss in that book, I'll be talking about today, but somewhat from a different angle. More recently, I took my best cartoons and put it together as a cartoon book called He's an Anti-Zionist Too. You'll get to see some of those cartoons today. Prolific, I guess, is true. I have over 40,000 posts on my blog over the 20 years, almost 21 years. And social media, and it's probably closer to 130,000 followers if you include everything. So according to most definitions, I am definitely in, and I still can't believe this myself, but I am definitely in the category of an influencer. I have given talks before, and I've hosted seminars both in Israel and in the United States, which is interesting when you want to be anonymous, but I generally ask people, please don't record, please don't take pictures, and they've so far been very good about that. And of course, in my spare time, I control the world. So, but there's always time for that. Here's what we're going to be discussing. First, defining anti-Semitism, and we're going to discuss why anti-Zionism is just the latest flavor of anti-Semitism. It is not distinct from it. Going through a case study of the Massachusetts Teachers Association that has been in the news in the past several months. I wanted to look at it from an angle that I believe that most people don't look at it from, but it's the sort of thing I use, and I think it's one that is useful. Then I'm going to generalize that more to propaganda techniques in general, how to recognize them, and particular emphasis on framing, but there's a lot of them. In fact, I barely scratched the surface, but I think it's important for us to know that it's not good enough to be knowledgeable about Israel's history or knowledgeable about current events. You also have to understand how the other side thinks and how the other side does what they do. You have to be able to recognize when they're using propaganda techniques and how to counter them. We're going to be discussing bias, both media and otherwise, how bias works, because it's really a psychological thing. And finally, to put all that together and what the subject of this entire speech is what you could do to help fight anti-Semitism, defend Israel online, and with some specifics about what, depending on how deeply you want to go into it, but even the people that are just, that don't feel that they're tech savvy or that they spend that much time online, there are certainly things that you can do that can amplify other voices and help, certainly help defend Israel. In the book, as well as here, I always like to begin with defining anti-Semitism. I came up with my own definition of anti-Semitism. This is not meant to replace the IRA definition by any means. I hope that I'm not a politician, and I don't have contacts in high places, but I do hope that people that do could help IRA incorporate this as a specific method of that fitting in within their definition, because obviously their definition has been successful and been widely adopted. But I wanted to come up with my own because I wanted it to be more precise and more useful. In other words, that make it easier to apply. So here is my definition. It is anti-Semitism is hostility towards, denigration of, malicious lies about, or discrimination against Jews, which is obviously the major part, as individual Jews, as a people, as a religion, as an ethnic group, or as a nation, meaning Israel. Obviously, people, the last part is what people would find to be controversial, but I don't believe that's really controversial at all, as we're going to, go on discussing a little bit. So, as I said, I think it's more accurate and more useful, not only in defining what anti-Semitism is, but I think this is the only definition that also can help define what anti-Semitism isn't, because I think it's precise enough that if things don't fit in this definition, they really aren't anti-Semitism, which is an interesting way of looking at this as well. Essentially, it can be used as an algorithm. You can take something that somebody says or something that somebody does, and you can look at this definition I have and see, does it fit under any of these categories? And even better, you can actually you could actually make a taxonomy of sorts saying, hey, this fits in under denigration of Jews as a religion, or malicious lies about Jews as a nation, or whatever. You could actually use it further that way. And it fits in a tweet. It's it's very compact. I'm happy that it's been taken seriously by some very, very smart people and some academics. It's been taught as one definition among many in a course in an Ivy League school. It's been discussed in one published book so far. It's been discussed in a series of other lectures and blog posts by other academics. So it is so it's again, it gains ground in a slow way, in a small way, but I really do think it's accurate, and I really do think it's useful, and I think it would be, as anti-Semitism morphs, I think this is something that is still a very, very good tool, no matter what what sort of things you throw at it. And as we say, anti-Semitism does morph over time, and everybody knows this to some extent. The type of anti-Semitism that was demonstrated by Pharaoh in Egypt was, hey, we're afraid that the Jews are going to combine with our enemies and attack us. But as we're coming up with Purim, with Haman or Haman, his anti-Semitism was completely different. He was saying, hey, these people are different from us, and they have different rules and different laws. We can't have that in our kingdom. Roman anti-Semitism was sort of almost the flip side of that. It's like, hey, they act differently from us. We have to have them assimilate, or else they really can't be true Romans. They didn't, they weren't talking as much about killing, at least. Christian anti-Semitism, of course, the accusation that that Jews killed Jesus. Medieval European anti-Semitism, which is related to Christian, which obviously gets into things like the blood libel and poisoning the wells. Islamic, in which Jews are considered to be inherently breakers of covenants, and as far as the Quran is concerned, and then dhimmis, meaning inherently second-class citizens, and there's other issues there. Lutheran, obviously Martin Luther was very influential in his anti-Semitism. Racial, which was the first supposedly scientific. It's interesting when you look at them all, they all look at the previous versions of anti-Semitism as somehow as beneath them. The new ones are always the ones that are the best ones. I don't believe in the previous ones. I'm not so, when Voltaire was anti-Semitic, he wasn't using Christian anti-Semitism as a basis. He feels I'm a philosopher. Here's why Jews are bad. Everybody always comes up with new ways of doing it. Most recently, it's been branded again as anti-Zionism. The communists were the first ones to really do that. And then, of course, today's anti-Semites are using anti-Zionism because it's not as fashionable to say that you hate Jews after the Holocaust. So that's really what caused it to morph as it is today. But each iteration, like I mentioned, claimed to be an acceptable version as opposed to the previous ones. And anti-Zionism is no different. They'll swear up and down, oh, I'm not anti-Semitic. There's nothing wrong. I'm absolutely, I have absolutely no problem with Jews. But, in the end, it ends up being the same sort of thing. And I have no doubt in 20 or 50 years, as the next ones come up, people are going to say, well, those early anti-Zionists certainly missed the boat. But here's why anti-Semitism, it's never going to go away. Here's one of my more favorite cartoons about that I made about anti-Semitism or modern anti-Semitism. Just saying, that it's when you think about it, that what they're saying is, no, we're not anti-Semitic, but it just so happens that the only country that we're completely obsessed over and that we make protests over and that we go and occupy buildings and colleges over and everything happens to be filled with Jews. That's just a coincidence, but it's nothing to do with Jews. Of course not. So let's talk about the Massachusetts Teachers Association, which is, again, something that you guys are familiar with. So, and for those that aren't, so the MTA union published resources on Israel and occupied Palestine, which included, and I'm just going to concentrate on this, they included a lot of posters, but they included this poster that I have on the screen. So the dollar bill shaped like a Star of David is an obvious anti-Semitic trope, and most people look at that and they say, hey, we know this is anti-Semitic. It's obviously anti-Semitic. What's this doing in this, in this packet of which you're pretending that you're actually informing teachers? The reasons they gave were absurd. However, the way I look at it, whenever I see something like this, and I see like a lot of things like this, I see anti-Semitism all over the place, again, particularly in the Arab world. I always still like to look at it as, is this true? Is there anything, no matter how absurd it says, I want to find out where they got this from, where they think they got this from, how it turned into this meme or whatever they're trying to do. And I think we can generalize that and to how to do fact checking altogether, because that's a critical skill. And there's nothing stopping us all from doing that. But it is a skill. And it's a skill that I think in particular should be taught in the classroom, as we're going to see. So I'm going to talk about specifically what the text was on this cartoon. It said that, since 1949, the U.S. gave Israel a total of 83 billion, 205, very specific numbers of dollars, plus the interest is that of the 49 million, 133 billion, 132 million. So it may mean that the U.S. government has given more federal aid to the average Israeli citizen in a given year than it's given to the average American citizen. And that's the key of what they're saying. After the Jewish Star and everything like that, anybody that reads it is still going to have that in their mind. They're going to say, you know what? It does seem like a lot of money, and it seems plausible that America is giving more money to Israel than to us taxpayers. So I wanted to look at that accusation. Is this true? That would be a significant thing to hold against Israel if it's true. So first, I look at when the poster was written, because it has a number on it, but we don't know when that number supposedly came. And I saw that it was from a Google image search. It was actually made in 2007. But instead of looking at the numbers as of 2007, I think, I thought it was going to be, we might as well look at the worst case scenario, the case where the U.S. has given the most money to Israel by far, and that would be 2024. That would be last year. The U.S. gave Israel $18 billion, far more than it's ever given before. Usually it gives on the order of $3 billion, $4 billion in the most recent decade a year. But because Israel was in this war on a front with 7 fronts, the U.S. gave much more money. So if we're ever going to compare and try to come up with a way that the U.S. gives more money per capita to an Israeli than it does to an American, 2024 would be the year to look for. So now let's look up the federal budget. You can look that up. Okay, it's easy enough to find out what the federal budget is as of, I don't remember whether my numbers are 2022 or 2023, but it's close enough, 6.5 trillion. We can compare it to the entire federal budget. But it's hard to say what exactly the person from the poster meant, because they said aid given to the average Israeli citizen, then it's given to the average American citizen. Now, part of the federal budget is not given to the average American citizen. None of the budget given to Israel goes to the average Israeli citizen. So there's already a deception over there that you have to think, you have to like tease out of there. All of the money, or practically all of the money that the US gives Israel, is for defense. So what are we comparing against? The way they're writing it is they're trying to make it sound like the average Israeli citizen benefits from social programs or other ways from American money more than Americans do. So are they talking Social Security? Are they talking, Medicare type stuff? Are they talking defense? It's hard to say, but let's pretend it's any of them. If you compare it just with social programs, the US spends about $4.7 trillion a year on that. Or if you compare it even just on defense, which was about $820 billion a year, and then you calculate by per capita how many Americans there are, how many Israelis there are this year, about 9.5 million Israelis, about 320 million Americans, you come out that the average American gets far more, about 4 or 5 times more, even in 2024 when the US gave so much more money to Israel. So clearly the poster, even with its specific numbers, stuff like that, is making up numbers. In 2007, it would have been much, much less than that. Let's generalize this a little bit more of how this could be used in a classroom. The stuff I was just talking about obviously should be used in a classroom is what I'm talking about. It's like you ask the students, okay, what are the questions we need to ask? What's the budget? What are we talking about? Are we talking social programs, etc.? So now we can talk about it a little bit more generally. Why is there a Star of David there? What does it represent? Does it represent Israel or does it represent Jews? What emotion is the poster trying to make you feel? When it says that the US government has given more money to the average Israeli citizen, what are they trying to, their audience is American. So what are they trying? Are they trying to get Americans angry? Are they trying to get Americans jealous? Are they trying, what are they trying to get you to think? Why are they putting these very specific sounding numbers? 49,937,000,000, 49,937,000,000. They all sound very specific. Does that make it seem more accurate? It does. That's one method of propaganda is to when you give a specific number, it sounds it sounds far more credible than if you say billions. But look also what they say. It says this may mean that the US government has given more. They don't want to lie. They want to be caught in a lie directly, which is very funny, but it's true. As much as I see propaganda, whether it's Arab propaganda or far right propaganda, far left propaganda, doesn't matter. In general, they try to base the stuff on truth. Sometimes it's bizarre stuff that has nothing to do with the truth, but they always try a little bit. So even this poster, which is no doubt, undoubtedly anti-Semitic, says this may mean, which means if somebody goes back to them and say, what are you talking about? It's not even close. And in 2007, I'm sure it wasn't close. I'm sure it was, 10, 20 times, whatever it would be, not even close. They could say, well, we didn't say it was. We say it may mean that. In some years, it's that way. So that's like a sort of a plausible deniability that they're trying to do. So this would be a more valuable lesson than most high school subjects are, to be able to teach something like that, especially in a day in which high school students and really everybody get all of their information from the internet. So wouldn't this be a great high school class? Again, this is the Massachusetts Teachers Association putting this stuff out. So we could turn it around on them and saying, if you really care about what you're teaching students, here's something you could teach students. Here's would be a great lesson. Teaches problem-solving skills. It teaches critical thinking. It's really cross-disciplinary because between all of these accusations for Israel, and then of course in propaganda in general, I'm not saying only to apply it to Israel. We have social studies, history, current events, math, science, psychology. There's all of these things, language itself. So you need to know information and you need to look up information to find out whether these things are true or not. So it's given some more examples specifically about Israel, but it could apply to any propaganda. Israel steals organs from Palestinian bodies. This is a standard Arab claim. They used it during the Gaza war as well. So again, this is what I do. I'll look things up, and it is literally impossible to get a viable organ out of a dead body, especially one that's been buried. it cannot happen. The only possible exception is for somebody who's recently died and who was still in the hospital, corneas might be able to be taken out, but this is not what they're talking about. Digging up a body, you can't use their corneas either. So it's literally impossible. And this is the way, one way of fighting. Once you find that the people that are telling you stuff are liars, that's an important thing. The claim that Israel has a secret weapon that vaporizes Palestinians, this is something that's come out NGOs are saying this stuff. There's a European NGO that's just pretty much a Palestinian NGO, but it's based in Europe, and they make themselves sound European. They're based in Geneva. But they said that Israel they literally say this, and Arab media says this too. Israel is a secret weapon that vaporizes Palestinians. No, I'm sorry. A nuclear bomb can vaporize people. Nobody's come up with a weapon short of that can do that. 70% of those killed in Gaza are women and children. This has been repeated all over the place because of the Palestinian Ministry of Health. It just so happens the Palestinian Ministry of Health has 2 sets of books, because otherwise they also have a place where they have detailed lists of the names of people that they say were killed in Gaza. And when you look at those, you see a much lower percentage than the 70%. And they have listed like 30,000 people or 32,000 people. I don't remember the exact number. If you take that number, this is math, you can do this on a spreadsheet, you take that number and you say every other person that they don't count is a woman and child, you still wouldn't hit 70% women and children. So it is mathematically impossible to reach that number. So these are the sort of things that you can do. And I'm saying, and in a class like this, students can say, hey, I saw this on the internet. They would be anxious to go to class, say, hey, I saw this on the internet, is this true? And then a good teacher should be able to say, okay, let's break it down and let's see what information we need to find out whether the thing is true or not, and then do a real fact check. This would be a really great thing for students to learn. Why aren't the Massachusetts teachers doing something like this? Why am I, an anonymous blogger, coming up with this idea and these guys aren't? And everybody agrees that fact checking is an important skill. But even now, they're outsourcing it. They're saying, well, if the newspaper has a fact check, then it's okay. If Snopes has a fact check, it's okay. But sometimes they let their opinions and their biases affect their fact checks as well. Sometimes you have to fact check their fact checks, and you read them, and it's just like, it's crazy. Anyway, so recognizing propaganda techniques, conspiracy theories. Yes, assuming Jews cooperated with each other. That's the most ridiculous thing about conspiracy theories, because they all assume that Jews were working together in some nefarious plot. And Jews are the least homogenous people in the world. We argue more than anybody else does. So that's a little bit absurd. Thinking past the sale is something that's really insidious. It's they won't say something like Israel is guilty of genocide. They're going to say, because Israel is guilty of genocide, here's what we must do. So in other words, they're pretending that the genocide accusation is already accepted fact, and then they go beyond that, and they don't give the actual listener a chance to even think, oh, I just got lied to by the first half of the sentence because they're making me think about the second half of the sentence. What should we do about it? Emotional appeals. Just look at what just won the Oscar for Best Documentary, No Other Land. It's the basis for it, the actual factual basis for it, is a lot of stuff that they either didn't say or they misrepresented, but the entire movie is emotional. Oh, look at these poor people. And okay, yeah, they are poor people. There are a lot of people that are suffering for a lot of reasons, but you need to understand the whole history of the region. You need to understand that these people really didn't live there before Israel had used it as state land for open fire for the IDF exercises. And Israel had negotiated for the few that were grazing there to make sure that they would be out of the way and give them a notice before they would be using the exercises. They're not ancient villages. They just did not exist before the 80s, certainly. Demonization is another method, of course, and we know about that, and purposeful ambiguity and dog whistles as well. I think I'm falling behind schedule over here, sorry, because I do tend to talk. So let's just go through this. And there's so many of these. There are literally hundreds of logical fallacies, but once you know them, then it's much easier to identify them. Token endorsement. We can't be anti-Semitic because we have some Jews who agree with us. That doesn't mean anything. Alternative truth. Palestinians have their narrative. It's just as valid as any other narrative. No, that's not necessarily true. Not all narratives are factual. Appeal to closure. Israel must give up land because otherwise the conflict will never end. Well, that one does not necessarily follow the other. Appeal to pity. Palestinians are weaker, so we must support them. They're suffering, so they must be right. Appeasement. If we give in to student protesters, they'll leave us alone. We know that never works. Inertia. Jews weren't allowed to pray on the Temple Mount for centuries, so we must keep the status quo. Who says that, discriminating against Jews for hundreds of years is the correct thing to do? Bandwagon fallacy. We're on the right side of history. Our movement is growing. So does that mean you're right? Big lie that we hear a lot. Israel's an apartheid state. Israel's committing genocide. Most Palestinians are against terrorism. They're not. Most Palestinians support a two-state solution. They don't. Israel's the obstacle to peace. It's not. There were no rapes. Obviously not. 11,000 Gazans are missing under the rubble. That's an absurd number that was literally made up and reported all over the place. Completely not true. Loaded question. Why do you support Israel's genocide of Palestinians? Diminished responsibility. After decades of occupation, what else can you expect from Palestinians? Of course, they're going to start killing and raping people. Lying with statistics. Israel has 51 laws discriminating against Palestinians. No, it doesn't. Appeal to authority. Experts agree that Israel's actions may constitute war crimes. So who chooses these experts? Yeah, there are some people that call themselves experts that say that. So what? There are experts on the other side. And of course, there's the as a Jew logical fallacy. Which again, you can see this in my cartoon book. All the things that the as a Jews can do, we can blow shofars. Framing is terrifically important. When you let one side create the framework for the argument, they already are winners. It's possibly the most effective propaganda technique. It puts the other side on the defensive. Who started the war in 2023? Okay, pretty much all of us know that. Who started Cast Lead in 2008? Everybody thinks that Cast Lead was started by Israel. What practically nobody knows is 3 days before Cast Lead, Hamas started their own thing. They called it Operation Oil Slick or Operation Oil Stain, depending on how it's translated. And they started a huge barrage of rockets against Israel. And they declared it. They continued calling it that into the first or 2 weeks of the war until finally, they decided they changed the name of it and they decided, okay, we will be more effective calling ourselves victims than winners. But it's how you frame everything. So there was once a history book. It was written in 2012 that was meant to be as even-handed as possible, to show side by side parallel histories of Israel and from the Israeli perspective and from the Palestinian perspective. It was written by left-leaning Jews and very normal-sounding Palestinians, and it was published. And there was some acclaim to this book. People spoke about it. And here's the first chapter. From the Balfour Declaration to the British Mandate. So both sides of the thing, they both started from the Balfour Declaration. What's the problem there? The problem is framing. When you talk about Israel, you have to realize that Israeli history didn't start in 1917. It didn't start with Aliyah in the 19th century. It started with the Jews, with Joshua coming into the land of Israel. It started with David and the kingdoms of Judah and Israel. This is where, that's the beginning. The Jews are wedded to the land of Israel. Jews are emotionally and religiously tied to the land of Israel. If you start the history in 1917 or in 1890, you are starting from the perspective that Jews are the outsiders and that they came in and that they have no business to be there. So framing is terrifically important, and you have to realize that when when you get sucked into the other person's framework, you're being put on the defensive. Human Rights Watch, they came out with a poster on the left talking about how it's unequal that same people, whether it's a Jew or a non-Jew or an Arab, that are born in the same place, that they're treated differently. So the left-hand side is the HRW poster. Is my legal status in Jerusalem secure? Yes for the Jew, no for the Palestinian. Can I move abroad for a few years and come back? Yes for the Jew, maybe not for the Palestinian. Will I keep my legal status if I move to other parts of the West Bank? Yes, and a maybe not. Can I easily move to a new home in East Jerusalem? Yes, and maybe not. So I decided to change the framework. let's do a completely, I took the same pictures, same citizens they're talking about, Jewish citizen, Palestinian, not even a citizen, still a resident in East Jerusalem. Can I visit the Dome of the Rock? For the Jew? No. For the Palestinian? Sure. Can I visit Tel Aviv? For both? Yes. Palestinian can visit Tel Aviv. Can I visit Ramallah? The Jew cannot go to areas A or B. Palestinian absolutely could. Can I vote for the mayor of Jerusalem? Yes. So when you take the same format that Human Rights Watch did and ask different questions, all of a sudden the apartheid that they're trying to prove is against Jews. All of a sudden, the person with the most rights in Israel are the Arabs who live in Jerusalem. Now, of course, that's not true because these are Arab residents of Jerusalem. But honestly, if you're talking about Arabs that accepted Jewish citizenship and Israel has offered, not Jewish citizenship, Israeli citizenship, and Israel has offered Israeli citizenship to every single member, every single Arab in East Jerusalem, or I should say Jerusalem, they have more rights than any Jew does. I mean, by any yardstick, Arab residents of Israel have more freedom of movement and more than Jews do. So, and they have the exact same rights that Jews do. So you could just turn it around and all of a sudden the entire apartheid argument doesn't just fall apart. You can make it sound the exact opposite. Again, it's absurd to say the exact opposite because obviously there's discrimination against Arabs in Israel and it's something that has to be worked on. But it's a framing question. And people don't look at the frame. They can get snowed by the Human Rights Watch propaganda technique. And it is a propaganda technique. History. This is, again, one of my favorite cartoons. For those people that like land acknowledgements, there could be a land acknowledgement for Arabs that live in Ramallah saying, hey, this is the noble tribe of Benjamin. So again, it's all framing, and framing is tremendously important. Okay, let's talk about media bias. Most media bias are crimes of omission. They won't put in context. They're not going to compare with other conflicts. They won't look at history correctly. So they'll say things like, it didn't begin on October 7th, because Israel has supposedly been doing horrible things to Gaza before that. What people don't realize, and again, I've put this in my blog and in detail, is that things in Gaza were really much better than they had been, as of October 6th. 2023, things in Gaza were better than they were before Hamas took over, or at least before like 2007, or before Israel closed everything, I should say, before Israel started, putting restrictions on what goes into Gaza. So it was like 2007. So things were actually better than before the siege, what people call the siege. And nobody talks about that. It's things were better. So don't tell me things were so awful in Gaza, because they weren't. They were better than they were previously. There was nothing that caused them to do this stuff. It's just Hamas being anti-Semitic, obviously. But of course, Arab attacks began way before Zionism, way before occupation, way before Israel started. There were attacks of Jews in the 19th century. There were the Hebron massacres. Also, media bias is a story placement and size. I mean, this can't be avoided, but nevertheless, when the New York Times puts on the front page, a picture of a poor Palestinian, that is bias because they chose to do that instead of a picture of a victim of October 7th. Choosing which side to put first in an article. Who do they interview first? Who do they quote first? They'll try to put both sides of the story, but they will subtly give more attention and more credence to one side than the other. Equivalence is another thing. When you say Hamas says that this number of people were killed and Israel says, well, this number was Hamas, they're like, you can't put an equivalence between the two because they're not on the same moral plane. And of course, I mentioned before, appeal to experts that agree with the bias. And the major newspapers will do this all the time when they talk about legal issues or things like that. They will find the legal experts that agree with them, and then they specifically go to those people to be able to be commenting on the story. In the Gaza war, there's media bias like crazy, not believing Israeli statements without independent proof, but trusting Hamas sources implicitly. They'll still say, oh, according to the Hamas-led Ministry of Health, but nevertheless, whenever Israel had a problem, they would say, hey, we have no independent proof that what Israel is saying is true. Israel has COGAT. It had statistics, very detailed statistics of the amount of aid that goes into Gaza. And it was almost never quoted. by the newspapers. They would quote the UNRWA statistics, and the UNRWA statistics left out a lot of the aid that was coming in that was specifically from like private, Israel would allow these private contractors to come in and bring food. So there was definitely a lot of food going into Gaza, but UNRWA was only counting the stuff that came from NGOs, for example. And it's all a manifestation of this trope that Jews cannot be trusted. This is a real joke that was in British newspapers, I believe it was British newspapers in like 1921, talking about how untrustworthy Jews are, about a father with a Yiddish accent, obviously, asking his boy to jump, saying, "I'm going to catch you," and then letting the boy fall on the ground and saying, "Hey, never trust a Jew in business, not even your own dad." This Simon and Garfunkel song, The Boxer, always pops into my mind when I look at all of these people that just only listen to what they want to hear and not believe anything else. The ICC and the Amnesty genocide reports are absurd because they assume that they know what Israelis are thinking and what Israeli leaders are saying. They know that they really have genocidal intent. An Israeli official says something ambiguous that's it's interpreted as genocidal. When an Israeli official explicitly says the targets are only Hamas, they have no intention to hurt civilians, oh, that's a cover-up. Things like pinkwashing, greenwashing, is what it really means is that anything that Israel does that is good, anything that agrees with the liberal and progressive orthodoxy there, about ecology, about rights for transgender, whatever it is, it's really bad. And it's also a conspiracy theory. They're saying, oh, Israel looks like they're doing something good. It's in order to, take attention away from what they're really doing that's bad. This is one that you see a lot also, especially in the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty reports. They treat the Israeli army as if it's a rebellious teenager. Oh, they're acting out and they're doing this sort of thing. They don't know the first thing. There are very few military experts that work for Amnesty or Human Rights Watch. I'm not saying I'm a military expert, but I've worked in large organizations and I've looked at reports from the IDF and from legal reports and stuff like that. And it's like they have procedures, they have processes, they have huge amounts of stuff that have to go into place before they choose a target. They have layers of lawyers to look at everything they do. And nobody talks about that sort of stuff. They say, well, Israel decided to bomb these guys because they hate them. And it's just absurd. So in general, how does bias work? Anti-Zionists see something they don't understand. They reflexively assume the worst. And to counter it, and the sort of thing that I do is you should be biased towards Israel and come up with alternative explanations that fit the facts better. So here's a famous picture that was, I think, 2013. You see this angry-looking Jewish settler. He's got the payas, he's got the yarmulke, everything like that, and a scared-looking Palestinian girl, Muslim, covers her hair. He's yelling at her. Something terrible is happening. He's angry, and she's scared. Until you look at what's in her hand. You turn it around, you look at it, it says Tehillim. This is a Psalms book in Hebrew that she grabbed from him. He's trying to get it back. He's angry that she just stole his Psalms book. You can't see that from the picture unless you look carefully. And then after I put it up on the blog, people have actually dug up and found the video showing the entire sequence of events in which she went over to him on the, about 15 feet away from where the scene is, grabbed it, ran to the other side. He chased after her. All the cameras were finding him. We were showing him chasing after her. This is from 2006. Famous thing. People were saying, look, and they put captions on it saying, look, Israeli girls are putting messages on rockets to kill Lebanese children, saying, look, saying with love, we want to kill you with love, Israel. If you actually look at what she says, it says to Nasrallah with love. They were specifically writing, we want to kill Hezbollah. And also the context that's not put over here is that these people were in shelters. All the kids that were in North Israel were stuck in shelters for days. They couldn't even leave because of all the rockets. Here, somebody was a brilliant idea. Somebody let them come out and give them a little bit of agency over their lives. And that's part of this, writing on the rockets. But nobody says they want to kill children. They want to kill the people that are shooting rockets at them. And there are lots of more examples over here, which I probably don't have time for. The Israel sterilized Ethiopian women is absurd. Netanyahu saying, oh, he's invoking Amalek. And he was not. He was invoking Amalek, but he was talking about the mitzvah of remembering Amalek, not of wiping out Amalek. And that was actually the quote he was doing. Sderot Cinema is another one saying that people were in Sderot or cheering the rockets and Israeli airstrikes. When you assume Israel is innocent, you're almost always right. And also, the side that admits mistakes is the side that's honest. The IDF makes mistakes, and they admit it. And you never hear the Palestinian side admitting mistakes. Put the other side on the defensive when you reframe. Jews are an indigenous people returning to their ancestral homeland. That's the true framework. Palestinian nationalism is relatively recent, and it really exists only to destroy Jewish nationalism in the Jewish state. That's the reason it was created. That's the reason it's still there. There's a very good reason why Palestinians did not accept the many peace offers, detailed and generous peace offers that Israel gave them from the left to the right. It's because they want to make sure that whatever peace offer they take is also allows them an angle to be able to still destroy Israel later. So, for example, the right of return. There's vicious anti-Semitism in mainstream Arab and Muslim media. They certainly don't distinguish between Jews and Zionists. The media doesn't talk about that. Palestinian leaders always supported the world's worst dictators, from Hitler through Stalin, Saddam Hussein, and Assad. It's absurd. And nobody really talks about that. And of course, you look at the polls, a large majority of Palestinians consistently support specific terror attacks against Jews. It's funny, if you look at the polls, if you ask them in general, do you support terror attacks against Jewish civilians? Maybe less than 50% will say that. When there's a specific terror attack that kills Jews, and I'm not only talking October 7th, I'm talking about the Har Nof massacre, I'm talking about a few others. When they ask specifically, it goes up to 80%. And again, nobody talks about this. So my philosophy when I defend Israel online is I try to use primary sources as much as possible. I'll look up footnotes. Sometimes in Human Rights Watch or something like that, the footnotes will say the opposite of what they claim. I try to anticipate counter arguments and debunk them beforehand. So when I make my arguments, I want to do it in such a way in which there's no room for the other people to actually come up with a counter argument because they know I'm right and I wrote it in such a way that they can't really find anything wrong with it. Be precise. I'd like to be original. That's me. I try not to burn out, which is a significant danger because it's tough to do this stuff all day. And also, I don't pretend to know something I don't. I'll only try to write about stuff I really know about. I'll try to learn it quickly, and I'll research as quickly as I can, but I don't try to pretend to know what I don't know. What you can do, this is what you're all here for. So yes, learn Jewish history and the history of anti-Semitism. Know their arguments. It's not enough to know our side. You have to know their side and how to refute them. It's not the same skill set. When you see an article or a meme you like, retweeting is a big deal. It definitely helps. It lets more people see it, and you never know when you're going to hit. Sometimes I never know what's going to go viral. You never have any idea what's going to go viral. But it's only one person retweeting that another person sees that's very influential that retweets it, and then it turns into a big deal. So that's really big. Send interesting articles and posts to the people who are influencers. I'm not only talking me, but the people that are appropriate for it. Because we can't read everything. There's too much stuff out there. And sometimes, listen, we're not going to, I'm not going to post everything that everybody sends me. And some of the stuff I'm going to disagree with, but I definitely appreciate anything that anybody sends me. I can't say I can acknowledge all of it, but I definitely appreciate it. This one's a very easy one, and it's very effective. When you see something that's really good, a great meme or a video or a point or a tweet or something like that, cross-post it to other social media. We've got Reddit, we've got Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikTok. Sometimes you'll see great stuff in one that's not in the other. If you like it, put it in the other place. And some of my most popular tweets came from these other sources. And don't forget to give credit, of course. When you see a reporter or an NGO that says something wrong, politely email or tweet so they can correct it. Hashtags, I don't use them as much as I should, but they're very important to be able to get people to read stuff. And apply your own expertise. And this is a picture in the New York Times showing that claimed that, oh, we have all of these bullets that doctors dug out of children's skulls in Gaza. And immediately after they did that, we had people that were both snipers, sharpshooters, as well as radiologists looked at these pictures and said, there is no way these are real. It is literally impossible. I'm not a radiologist, but once they point it out, they're saying, look at this person's head. There's no entry wound. And the sharpshooters would say, at the speed that a bullet goes, there's no way it would get lodged in a skull because it goes way too fast. It would go to the other end. I mean, it was a complete lie. The New York Times didn't admit it. It was an opinion piece officially, but it was a complete lie. And if you have your own expertise, everybody has their own field of expertise, and sometimes these stories, intersect with what you know. When to argue and when not to argue. It's because sometimes you just can't resist. But who are you arguing with? What do you want to accomplish? And who's the audience? Don't waste your time. There are more of them than there are of us. You're not going to convince the committed anti-Zionists. If there's a conversation going on that a lot of people are watching, then it might be worth to argue with them because you're not talking to them, you're talking to the audience. And sometimes this is Jewish tradition. Sometimes a good put down is better than wasting time arguing. This is what we say in the Haggadah for the wicked son. Hakei is shinov, you put his teeth on edge. That's not saying, that the argument that was in the Haggadah was not, oh, here's why you're wrong. The argument in the Haggadah is, hey, I'm going to make you look like an idiot. And that sometimes comes out very handy when you're talking about people who are not that are not going to be convinced no matter what you say. Should you become a creator? It's easy to write up your thoughts. To gain an audience does take time. If you do have something to add unique, if you have a specific expertise or a style, why not? We'll welcome you. But do grow a thick skin. You have to, if you get too big, there is doxing, there is threatening, and some of the best creators will use their personal stories, and the anti-Semites, especially women, it's crazy, but they'll go after them and they'll try to use everything they can to actually make that stuff personal against them. So just know what you're getting into. Tools, again, very quickly. Google Translate is great for text, and it can do images and documents nowadays. Google Books, I love it to look up history. Newspaper archives, Google has some. I pay for newspapers.com. I really enjoy it. Captions.ai can translate videos for you. Graphics editing GIMP is like essentially a free version of Photoshop, but it takes time to learn. Here are some tools that teach you how to download, that'll let you download videos from various social media platforms so you can upload them elsewhere. Screen captures are important. Reverse image search is important. Scholar academic papers will sometimes have data on history that you're not going to find anywhere else. AI, I use it a lot. I really enjoy it. It's not perfect. It's sort of like Wikipedia, meaning that it gives you a lot of good directions to look at, but you can't trust what it says 100%. But it's a great thing in many ways. It gives you a lot of information that you could verify. You can use it for translation. You could use it for various other tasks over here. Have it read large reports and ask questions about them. So instead of you reading a 200-page report, you can have an AI look at it, and then you can ask it, does it mention anything about Hamas rockets? Instead of you reading it, that saves you a lot of time. You could also, if you have an argument, you can ask AI to argue with you, and that'll help you make your arguments better. You can use it for fact checking too, but it does still hallucinate. AI can also make pictures. Now, this picture is actually something I made that did very well. This also went viral, but the picture of the bus stop was made by AI. I did the middle part of it. I used GIMP in order to be able to fit it in there, but it's, but it can do all that stuff. It can create videos nowadays. It can help you. It can be a social media consultant. It can help you write better headlines, fix grammar, help with your social media strategy is also actually very interesting. So in summary, look at that. I never finished the in summary page, so I apologize. In summary, you have to understand, what you're dealing with, what the, how propaganda works and how people are manipulated by it, and how to be able to call that sort of stuff out, and then and how you can use tools that everybody can get to. Most of these tools I'm mentioning are free. How you can use them and help you, defend Israel online. And again, I wanted to leave a little bit more time for questions in this, but this is what I could do right now. So that's it for now. I do actually have the questions on the screen. So, I mean, Gary, if you want to read them out loud, we can do it that way, or I could just read them myself and we can go on. That's up to you.
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, let me thank you, Elder. That was an amazing presentation. It really was so helpful. The way that you had it organized, just tremendous. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see what we got here. Somebody said, assuming teachers are intelligent is dangerous. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Our history in Israel started with Lech Lecha. Abraham was sent to a new land, and he bought the first piece of land, Maracham Lecha, to bury his wife Sarah. So I don't know if you want to respond to that or not.
I mean that's certainly true. There's a big irony over there, which is there's a famous commentary on Chumash that Rashi says that I think it's Rashi. I'm sorry, don't have it offhand, but it said or maybe it's Gemara that says there are like three places that the non-Jews could never argue that the Jews legally own because it's described, the purchase is described in Tanakh. One is in Hebron, the Marat HaMachpelah that Abraham bought for his wife and for as a burial spot. One of them is I believe Rachel's tomb. And one of them is Jerusalem that David legally acquired from the Jebusites. And of course, these are all things that are the most disputed areas nowadays. So it doesn't matter what the proof we have is because people don't care about proof. But it's a good point because we still have is it a legal deed? I can't tell you, but is it an emotional tie that we've had for far longer than the Arabs have? Of course, 100%.
Okay, so there's several other interesting questions, Elder. Somebody asked, why are you anonymous?
The reason in the beginning, the reason was because I work in a high-tech field, and the first thing, whenever I change jobs, the first thing that prospective employers would do is Google you. If they see 40,000 posts, they're going to be thinking you're not going to be spending any time on the job. You're probably doing this all day. I don't. I do all my stuff at night and in the morning, but nevertheless, it would not help my job prospects. Later on, and I've always intended, okay, at one point I would come out, and maybe I will, but I have a relatively rare name. If I would actually come out, I am worried not about myself, but I am worried about my family. Because they would, if people want to harass them, it would be relatively easy to find my family, my kids, grandkids, whatever. And I just don't want to put them through that. So it's I don't want to feel like a coward or anything like that. Personally, if it was just me, I really would, because it's important. I think I could have much more exposure if I wasn't anonymous. But as I said sort of in the lead up to this meeting, I am influencing the other influencers. Most of the other people that are considered pro-Israel and Jewish influencers follow me. And I don't mind being in that niche.
Thank you. Somebody's followed you since 2004. You have like a fan club. That's incredible, Elder. So that's wonderful. Also, people want to know how can we get copies of the slides and the recordings? This is being recorded, and once it's edited, I guess, Elder, once you approve it, we can send it out to people. Is that how you're?
Yeah, that's fine. And I'll put it up on my blog as well, certainly.
Okay, great. And people wanted to know why we didn't advise them a few hours beforehand. Just so you know, we're a group that's not funded at all, and we're at the mercy of volunteers to get these things done. So we did the best that we could as far as alerting people, and I hope everybody appreciates that. Well, let's get back to the teachers and questions and everything else.
Okay. I actually there were a couple of direct messages to me, so I'll just quickly go through them.
Sure.
Is there something specific you can point to that explains why young campus college students eagerly support Hamas? I don't think there's anything specific. I think this is a long-standing issue, and I believe it's not that they support Hamas. Again, nobody supports Hamas. Nobody supports Islamist terrorists. Hamas is a branch effectively of the Muslim Brotherhood. Nobody supports the other branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. So it's not that they support Hamas. It's that they hate Israel. And the reason they hate Israel, in a large part, is Soviet propaganda starting from like the 1950s, 1960s. That's what we're seeing over here, is the culmination of Soviet propaganda that infiltrated into American and European academia, and that's the fruits of that of an entire generation or two teachers and of activists that have assimilated these lies about Zionism, that turns it into, of course, we're going to support anybody who's against Zionism. So nobody supports Hamas. Honestly, nobody supports Palestinians. How much money do people actually give to Palestinians? How much support do how much do you find people saying, hey, I think Palestinians really should support a two-state solution and end this own thing? Arab countries will sometimes say that. The UAE will say that, but it's like these activists don't say that. They're anti-Semites. They're just pretending to be pro-Palestinian. Um, the next picture, the next comment I have is not all people have the time and expertise you have. Have you considered a way you can work together with others? Your work is extremely important. I like to think of ways we can all work together. I'm always trying to think of that. It's tough to, I do that, obviously. I am in mailing lists, private mailing lists and groups in which we do strategize. And there are some prominent people around there. So I do it as much as I can. And when there's something I can contribute, I'll do it. If people say, hey, we have a problem that's coming up, we're going to need help. And if it's something I can do to help, I'll do it. Or I'll do the same thing. I'll say, does anybody have expertise on this one issue? As I said, I'm not political. I don't have all the connections, but some of the people I'm connected to do. Hopefully people that are on this conference call do as well. So there are definitely things that everybody can contribute, and we definitely have to work better together. But it's so it does happen. Contact me and we'll see what we can do. I only have so many hours in the day, and I'm already using more than I have. But I'm always willing to listen and see what we can do to come up with other ideas. Do I speak to Hebrew schools and Jewish youth groups? I would. I haven't done that yet. Nobody's asked me. I've spoken to a Jewish youth group once, I think. Again, if you guys have ideas, let me know, and I'm willing to try to put it together. If I can come up with a way of speaking in a way that I remain anonymous, in which nobody's taking pictures. I've given lectures before in person, and I'm happy to do it again. Absolutely.
So, Elder, several other questions. What about when people argue, I can't agree with you, even though I'm Jewish, to that effect? They're the Jew today who does not support Israel. How do you deal with those situations?
I mean, that's part of the anti-Zionist Jews. I mean, you're talking. I'm not sure if you're talking about people that just are apathetic or if people that are actively anti-Zionist, because those are two different things. The apathetic Jews, the answer in many ways is not necessarily Israel education; it's Jewish education. Consistently, studies have shown that people who are committed Jews, and again, when I say committed Jews, I don't mean Orthodox Jews. I mean committed Jews, people who are really committed to the religion and to their people who visit Israel, people who are, who do Jewish customs, whether, again, it doesn't have to be Orthodox. Those are the people that go to Jewish camps or whatever. Those are the people that remain the most committed. The problem in America is that there are so many that are not, and there are so many Jews that are not even Jews by religion. They don't call themselves that. They call themselves atheists. These people are practically lost. But it's Judaism that's the solution. It's not, Israel by itself is not enough. We're part of a large people. We're part of a proud people. And when you throw off the religion, the Israel stuff is going to come off with it. It's going to be very difficult. There are some atheists that support Israel, of course, Jewish atheists. There are some, but in general, it's the easiest way to do it is to take your own religion, your own heritage, your own history seriously, because the rest of the world isn't. I mean, if the old thing is the old saying is that the anti-Semites will remind us who the Jews are, whether even if we forget who it is. So running away from it is not going to help any. And for the anti-Zionists, pretending to be, ingratiating yourself with the people with the other anti-Semites and hating yourself, they don't respect you anymore from it. Trust me, they do not. It does not make you into a better person. It makes it they despise you, but they will use you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any ideas for how to correct the bias on Wikipedia?
There are people that are working on it, and obviously, bringing it up to the top, which is what happened to Jimmy Wales, I think his name is. He already is. He's kicked some people off that were egregious. It's difficult to do the research, but there are some people that are doing it and they're discovering stuff. But in the end, become a Wikipedia editor, learn the ins and outs, and fix the things yourself. There are, I'm not a Wikipedia editor, but if I find something, I come across with something, I will tell people that I know that are and saying, hey, here's something that's clearly wrong. Here's the evidence. Here's the sources. Could you do something about it? It's a difficult thing, and in the end, it's never going to be completely trustworthy. Like I said, with AI, the same sort of thing. You have to double check with everything. It's losing its own credibility, which is unfortunate. But what can I say? It's a huge battle. I can't say we're ever going to win that one, but you can have small victories.
Why isn't the Jewish community going on the offensive against the lies that are in some case defining us?
I mean, some of us do. There certainly are groups that do. When you say Jewish community, I mean, we are fragmented, but there are some excellent pro-Israel organizations, students supporting Israel, Stand With Us, Jew Belong. There's a bunch that actually, especially even for younger ones, that are doing innovative things, that are, defending Israel and pointing out the lies. So I can't say there's none. The traditional Jewish community, in my opinion, needs to step up. They needs to do more. I mean, for example, this group that I'm, MAST by itself is tremendous. The fact that you exist is tremendous. We do have to have more, and we have to have it from lots of angles. Obviously, we need to. I mean, we're up against a tsunami. So, if you're a novelist, write a novel that takes place in Israel in which you don't, in which the truth is there, but it's not the main point of the book. I mean, it depends on, everybody should do what they're good at, but there really are some good groups out there.
How do you handle threats against you?
I have very few. Again, between being anonymous and also my style of writing is not confrontational. So so the people that are the most confrontational are the ones that get the most threats, but also the people that are the most visible. And since I'm not, and I really try to keep stuff on the realm of ideas, everything I say, and because I'm anonymous, I try to give as much proof of what I'm saying. So I'm saying, don't trust me because I have no credentials, or you don't know if I have any credentials. Trust me because I give evidence for everything I say. So that's where my credibility comes from. It's difficult. It's more difficult to attack that. Of course, I mean, listen. I mean, if people come after me on X or something like that, in general, I just either mute them or block them because it's a waste of time. What am I going to spend my time on? But I've been lucky that I haven't had that many threats. There are certainly the more outspoken people that are online. And again, as I mentioned before, a lot of them are women because because the people that are attacking really or might be anti-woman. I'm not sure what the reason is, but but like Hen Maziger, for example, he gets threatened. He gets attacked all the time because he's out there and he represents what everybody else hates. He's a non-white gay advocate of Zionism, and that drives them crazy. So, but personally, luckily, I've not had to worry about that so much.
Okay, how do we find your blog, and what is your blog, and how do we contact you?
Sure. My blog is Elder of Zion, which is spelled ELDEROFZIYON at blogspot.blogspot.com. I opened up recently a Substack, so it's the same thing, Elder of Zion, ZIYON. Substack.com. I also have a Twitter account at Elder of Zion. And also social media. You just look at that spelling, Elder of ZIYON, and you'll find me. I'm on, as I said, Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on, I'm not saying I'm active on everything. Actually, I'm not on LinkedIn with that name, but but most things I'm out there. And you Google me, you'll find me.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for staying and talking. Great conversation, fantastic presentation. I just want to say a few things that thanks to everyone for coming. And also, Elder, do you have closing comments and a prayer perhaps?
Um, sure, I'll be happy to. Actually, I didn't prepare the prayer. 1 second, I'm gonna have to look for that. But I forgot about that part. I apologize. Um, My closing comments again, I'm very happy that an organization like you exists, because it is, it's very important to see this sort of thing happen, that people are taking this seriously and that are trying to do something about it. I want more young people to be involved in this sort of thing. It is, that's really important. It is, and my blog generally skews older, so I would like to. I wish I could, find a way to attract more. But really, when it comes down to it, we need more young people, um, to people that are on TikTok, people that make their videos, people that want to have their faces out there. Um, it is, that is tremendously important, because the young people right now are the ones that are in the forefront of everything that's going on. So that is what has to happen. Um, and I wish, if you have, cousins or nephews or nieces or kids that can help, that would be a tremendous thing. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And the prayer that I would say, there's a prayer that is certainly in Orthodox congregations have been saying it every day since October 7th. It is it's something that we say every Monday and Thursday. It's a very appropriate thing for the hostages. In Hebrew, it's Achenu kol beis Yisrael, Achenuseinu kol beis Yisrael, Hanesunim b'tzara v'shivya, ha'omdim bein hayam bein hayabasha, hamakam yirachem aleim, yotziim yitzhar l'rechava, me'afelu l'ora, l'mishibut l'gula, hashta b'aglav isman kariv, v'nomar, amen. In English, it's our brothers and sisters in the whole house of Israel who are in distress and in captivity, who wander over the sea and the land. May God have mercy on them, bring them from distress to comfort, from darkness to light, from slavery to redemption, now swiftly and soon. Amen.
Elder, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. Remember, our next event is coming up. It's with Dr. Joan Lurie on May 18th, and she's going to be speaking about the United Nations. That's a hot topic, and that conversation is not to be missed. So make sure that you register. It's May 18th with Dr. Joan Lurie. And thank you once again, Elder. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. We're so appreciative.
Thank you. I thank you very much for having me. I do appreciate it.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Right.